again here, Selectmen's budget hearing number 2, February 4th, 4 p.m. after our Selectmen's meeting, which is now 5:47 roughly.
4:47?
4:47, sorry, 4:47, excuse me. Thank you. Call the meeting to order. All right, so today we're going to do a second review of the proposed operating budget. Hopefully we can get through it a little quicker. We got some number updates here and things that Julie will be able to point out for us.
Yeah, the first one in the selectmen section is that the selectmen office did not take the 3% increase, so that's a little bit lower than the last one.
Okay, so Selectmen, last time we met was $4,286, so it went down to $3,860 for that change. Any questions on Selectmen one?
Nope.
Alrighty, moving on to town clerk and tax collector. Any changes in this one? Looks like that's the same.
Right, there are no changes, but I would like to request that the $3,000 not be included. And Karen I asked you what your percentage increase would be with that, and it was over 10%, 10.5% increase if you got the 3,000 plus the 3% increase. So I'd just like to make a suggestion that that not be included in the budget.
I didn't think it was that high, but
I concur with that.
I want to take a motion then to remove that $3,000, I guess.
I will make a motion to remove that.
Second.
Any further discussion?
No.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
there was no change on the office. It reduced what we were able to.
On the financial administration, it's like radar and MASH. It answers my question before I ask it. Police department, anything there? I'm sorry, I skipped something here?
Assessing.
Assessing, why is that not there? I was looking at this sheet.
Oh.
Oh, I just put the department heads, so we can, if you look at the budget itself. Planning and zoning board, we talked about increasing that to 4,500 again. That changes in there.
So let's go, I'm sorry, start again there. Assessing was nothing.
Right.
Legals, we moved it down 35, that stays the same. And then personal administration was
One question on legal, there had been, someone was asking, do you think we should keep it that low based on the possibility of the short-term rental thing? I don't know if that's going to be an issue or not.
no, certainly more.
I think it's okay. I went to the meeting last night, and I don't think we're going to have a lot of litigation in that our wording is within the state's, as much as the state of New Hampshire will back us up on short-term rentals. We've pretty much stayed within that.
Okay.
So I don't foresee a whole lot of litigation over that.
Not good.
Yeah, it would really. All right, so we'll keep that.
It's not like we're dropping it to 0 too. We still have 25,000.
Right.
So you never know, but I would hope.
Well, there's still all those questions from the planning board and the ZBA and even the office. They come up, so we need some.
Yeah, you need something.
You want to just make it 30? That way we're cutting 50% at least. I mean, that's pretty appreciable.
I'm fine wherever we decide. I think 25 is fine. Is that what we had, right? Yeah.
All right.
So are we leaving it at 25 then, or are we?
I think so. Or you want to leave it where it is there, Rich? Is that the final?
Yeah, I think we're safe there.
Okay. Ready? Personnel administration, up a little bit. I don't know what that was. Reworking some numbers there.
Well, the FICA,
Went up a little bit.
no, that dropped.
Dropped. I'm looking at which one's the new one. That's right. I'm sorry, that's the new one. Yeah, so it went down a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay.
And planning and zoning, oh, Sarah had a question.
Sarah?
Last time I asked if I could have a percentage of what the employees pay for their health insurance.
It was 3.5%.
And could I ask how it is that most towns it's a 20%?
I didn't ever get back with you and Joyce about meetings, so do you want to, we can get together tomorrow if you want, we can look at some of the numbers there, but you're right in the comparison that our employees pay a smaller percentage than some neighboring towns.
Planning and zoning, we added 1,000 in there, is that correct?
Yep, last time you guys said that the planning board has something coming up, so they wanted to bump it up.
Any discussion on that?
No.
General government parks and buildings, that's stayed the same. Cemeteries, no change. No change on insurance. Again, that was building inspection, we discussed that last time and no changes on that. Police was one of the departments here, right?
No change.
No changes on anything on the police department. Ambulance, no change as well. Fire went down a little bit from 5,123 to 4,123, so we dropped 1,000 out of the fire code inspector wages, which is a hired contract service that we use occasionally. So that's.
And was that suggested $1,000 decrease from you, Jay, or was that?
What's that?
Was the $1,000 decrease based on what you submitted as a change for that?
Yes.
It wasn't something like that we came up with, it was something that you
We also
reduced.
dropped, it's not showing on this page, but under
Show the warrant.
capital reserve.
Right.
It'll drop there.
Okay, good.
And we also did away with the generator that was talked about a couple of years ago.
And we talked about another place we might be able to save, can't remember if it was dry
That's
hydrants.
the dry hydrant expendable capital reserve,
Okay.
which is plenty of money in there. If we need to work on the dry hydrant, so we're dropping that, bring it down, it went from 5 to 25, and now we're bringing it down to $500 just to keep it going.
Keep something.
We don't lose the fund, so that's one way.
Cool, thank you. Emergency management, still the same. Likewise to the highway administration. Right now, here's a change here at the highway department. Now, this is where I was offering or suggested to take some money out of the highway road maintenance, but that probably should be something that would be more of a capital reserve line item as well. And I'll talk about that when we get there. So we took out my suggestion of 30,000, so that's why that is up considerably, or down, I should say. What else did we change
And the
in there?
gravel.
Gravel, we
So-
increased
Yep.
to 8,000. I'm sorry, we took out 8,000, sorry, took out 8,000, thank you.
Yeah.
And took out the 30,000 that I wanted to have in there after discussion on that. Everything else remained the same, I believe. Okay. So almost level funding for the highway department, ultimately.
Excuse me,
Yes, I'm sorry.
with the gravel, I'm just going down as you were speaking, you're talking the 12,000 under the highway? And
Right.
you dropped it to what?
It was 20 in the original. It was dropped down to 12,000 for this second round.
When they wanted to take the 30 out, I was asking if I could have 8 added back into the gravel from that 30. But if we're keeping my 30, I don't need the extra 8.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's just, you know, a shift of the money, so
Right,
to speak.
right.
Yes.
Any other questions on that? All right, street lighting, no change. Solid waste, we finally got the numbers in there on that. Up $2,752. Looks like those are wages. Okay. Any questions on transfer station?
Nope.
Animal control, nothing. Public welfare, no change there. Library, $44,795.
That's offset with the revenue.
Yes.
Offset with revenue, right?
Yes,
I think we mentioned that last time, right?
yeah.
No change in that item from what we discussed from last meeting. Next page. Did I miss anything?
Conservation.
Did I miss other conservation?
I went to the meeting last night, and they have $57,000 in their account, which they get from the buyouts of current use. And I asked them to consider spending their money. It's really the town's money. It's our money. They're the stewards of that money, but I said, you know, rather than keep coming to the town for more money and sitting on $57,000, spend their money. Spend our money, spend that money. It's the only place where the planning board doesn't have any income stream, ZBA doesn't have any, but they do. So I think that it's appropriate that they spend that money. They don't have to, it doesn't have to be at a selectmen's meeting, it doesn't have to be at a town meeting. They just have to get a check cut by the treasurer and they can access that money. So I would say they should go that avenue for now. You know, spend it down, yeah, don't say spend all the money, but if they're asking for $2,000, spend the $2,000 from that.
I agree.
Okay.
Did they agree?
I believe they did.
I don't believe that was the first I even learned about.
Well, I was talking to the chairman, and I thought we were in agreement on that, although you were at the meeting, so maybe you have a different take on it, or a different reason.
I actually do, because I think this is a reoccurring cost, and $57,000, if the commission decided it wanted to get into a major project, it actually has the assets. But this is a reoccurring expense, just as the planning board does, and I think it gets dangerous to put it to zero, and then take an account that may be used for a large project. That's just my feeling. The commission last night didn't, as I say, that was the first I even known that, since I've been on, I just joined the board, but that was the first I learned of 57. But the question is whether the 57 is there just for annual, or whether it's there for specific projects.
That's why I was wondering if
Whether
there's
it's
anything
what?
earmarked for
Whether it's for
specific.
specific projects or whether it's for annual cost. And I think most commissions do have annual costs like the planning board. And if you take this out in years in the future, you're going to need to reinsert it if you do a big project.
Well, that's an opinion, but I think for the good of the town, they should go ahead and start spending the money they are sitting on. I don't know what the big project might be, but they're talking about a study for recreation at Prospect Farm. They're talking about an upgrade to the forestry plan. Well, I think those are great places to spend that money.
Well, we agreed last night to spend the $3,000 on the forestry management. And we don't quite know what the expenses are going to be as we start to do more of the restoration work up at the vaults, which we'd be drawing from that most likely.
Peter?
Just anecdotally, considering where the source of the money comes from, it's from the land use change tax from current use. Many towns in New Hampshire kind of gently earmark that money for land protection, like a land protection fund. So if a critical piece of land came up that was in the town's interest to acquire, that the Conservation Commission would have at least some money available to do that. That, again, it's not a hard and fast rule, but that's a lot. That's how a lot of towns view that money coming out of the land use change tax. It's not like it's operating funds. It's like a land protection fund. Again, just for your information.
Do we know what the $1,200 was spent on this year for the conservation?
Yeah, well, actually, wood chips came for free, but we did do a pilot project of putting in vegetation. We wanted to see, it held up through the summer. We want to see where that comes through. winter, but if it does, then we're gonna do a chunk more of that this coming year. There's also there is a need there to put some sort of passive but very acceptable trail definition in, because people are still wandering all over the place. And we'll lose many of the trees there if that continues, simply because the roots will get compacted.
But that $1,200 was spent mostly at the falls, probably, as opposed to administrative costs, or maybe
We
some?
usually go over the 2,000 at the falls this coming year. We want to see whether that comes through, but that one patch there was around $600 if anybody came up to see it. A good chunk of that was actually tied up in the cost of just transporting the stuff here. If we do it next year, we try to do a much bigger area so the transportation costs would still be the same thing, so there'd be a bigger bang for the buck. But the commission had decided to run that as a pilot just to see whether we could biologically get it to take. It appears that it will.
No, I hesitate to take things completely out of the budget, but it would also be nice to know if there was some kind of a formal plan or, I guess, designation for the funds. So I wouldn't be opposed to bringing it down some, but leaving a line item in there.
Okay.
So 500 would at least be something, a token, obviously, but it'd be something to reduce it down 500. That way they're not, wouldn't have spent over the money that would have been allocated for this year. 1,500, they still would have made it. But
So I'm sorry, we're leaving it
No.
at that or no?
No.
They spent 1,200, so you want to bring it to 500, did you say?
No, reduce it to,
Reduce it by five, that's what.
reduce it by 500.
Yeah, so bring it to 1,500.
Right.
Okay.
Is that amendable? And then spend 1,500, so.
Right, that's what that would go.
Are we okay with that? Yeah. Okay. Last page.
Everything helps.
Yep, it
Yes.
does. Other culture and recreation, no changes there. Parks and recreation, again, nothing there. Debt service remains the same. So from our last meeting, we're up to an increase of 5.12% of $112,764. Am I reading that correctly?
And just to make a note too, that does include one extra pay period, which really
And-
makes quite an impact.
And the reimbursement from the library, right?
Right,
Correct.
so those
So-
throw it up quite a bit.
Right. So we don't know the net on that, but it's certainly less than 5%.
Yes.
So around 3, guessing around 3. So, okay, so 3% looks like roughly after we get reimbursed from the library. Any other questions, discussion, comments? Karen?
Just wanted to, it's not good teaching, that's fine, make a correction on the mathematical percentage. It was not over 10%, it's actually 8%, just in case someone needs to check on that. I just wanted to make sure, so that it doesn't look so bad, I want you to make sure you do that.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Alrighty. Warrant articles. We have to vote on these. And first up are the reoccurring capital reserve funds. Fire department truck, 80,000. Road reconstruction, 65. Highway truck, 50. Ambulance is 10. Heavy highway vehicles, 30. Police cruisers, 15.5. Reevaluation of town property is down to 3. And solar energy is 5,000. Any comments, concerns? Anybody want to cut something? Don't say I didn't ask.
Nope.
I need to get your vote on this.
Yes, I know.
Is there, I see that you added the account and fund balance onto the page, was that?
Which one, I'm sorry?
On the whole left column?
Yes, that's
added?
the fund balance that I added, yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And the other one is the solar energy, because that's new.
Yeah, I actually added two things. I added solar energy, and then underneath the expendable trust, I added town office equipment, because I realized I had been told by our IT people that we need to start planning for possible
Replacement.
and we haven't been doing that, so I put in a small amount there.
Okay. And you got a new server this year, correct?
We were able to get it, yeah, this year.
Okay.
All right, so we're voting on these individually?
John,
Yes, go ahead.
I have a question on it. If I'm not mistaken, you made a statement last year when you announced that you decided to buy the sidewalk machine out of this money. And I understand all the history behind that, but there was comments about, I believe, that you would want to replace that amount of money this year. I don't see anything in there. Is that, you remember that?
I don't remember
I
that.
believe you did it at the town meeting when you explained what you were spending $120,000 on. I'm just questioning.
Checking it out.
The bridge is gonna go down next year. I don't know if there's any chance of waiting on putting that back in, but that's.
I'm pretty sure it was stated last year that it was, yes.
But is there a purchase that's supposed to happen?
No, it's just that was an unplanned, and we've been planning on a lot of the town equipment, highway, fire, and police with these things, and that came up to try to calm that issue that's been reoccurring forever, and you all know that. And that purchase was
Right, and
out of the blue,
I'm
and
just
it was,
saying,
I support, it's good we did it. It eliminated a lot of issues.
but I'm just saying, if it could be put in next year, then we would have a trust.
I'm just asking the question. It was stated, and I believe if you read the minutes of the meeting, it will show you that you had intended to replace that and get back to our standard plan. I'm not asking you to do it, I'm just asking if that has changed. And I'm assuming it has, because you don't have it in you.
No, we don't.
It's just pointing out a point that we took a potentially unplanned expenditure out of a planned replacement program of all of our equipment, and it was noticed that it was going to get replaced, or even partially would be. I just want people to realize that it's not there, and we aren't replacing, and that could potentially show up when it comes time to replace a $200,000 or $300,000 vehicle or $50,000 cruiser. I'm not, it's all town equipment that we try to, and that's been an ongoing replacement plan. We've delayed a couple of them. I just pointed out that that's money that came out that was supposed to be done, maybe go back in, and it's not there. I just wanted to know if there was a
What fund did that come out of?
Came out of the heavy highway vehicle fund. Kind of like one fund is for trucks and one fund is for equipment.
So that would be number 68.
It was perfectly, I mean, I'm not just making a point, John, that.
So you're
is
suggesting that
fund-
to make up for that, increasing the 30,000 to get more money in that fund because of that purchase? Is that what you're suggesting?
No,
Is that what you're?
my point is so that people don't forget when we're shy on a replacement of a major piece of equipment.
It's going to put us behind
because we took that out
schedule.
and we didn't replace it. So, I would.
Well, on my part, it would be an oversight. I didn't realize that we had said we were going to replace that, the money for the purchase of the sidewalk machine back into that this year. So for me, it was an oversight. I didn't even think of it as we were creating the budget.
It's sad. I think it was a great decision. I'm just pointing out, or at least the people here in the minutes, that was money that was very justified, but it's not there now, and it may affect going forward down the road when we should have a certain amount of money in the fund to be able to buy something, because of what we've done the last 10 years, and we don't. That's all my point is.
Okay, And if we need a truck, say for the highway department, it's a time that we'll look at bonding right then. I mean, there's been a lot of discussion about that, whether we should be putting this money into these funds or if we wait, for that time of purchase and bond it right then. So I don't think we're going to do without a new truck if we need one, if it comes up. But I hear what you're saying. I mean, the money came out of that account and was used, and I think it was, if you look at it this year, it was used to good advantage. I mean, the sidewalks, I think, are as well maintained as they've been ever.
What's the life expectancy on those things, the sidewalk machine?
I'm hoping that I can get at least 15
years.
Hoping, I mean, I don't,
What did it cost us?
it was 123,
Yeah.
123.8, I believe. The next
About 10,000 a
planned
year.
piece of equipment would be a loader, and that would probably be in about 2 years, and keeping the same money in there, planning it out, we're like $400 short for a loader on today's price. With our today's trade-in, we're about $400 behind. So it's really not, I mean, it's not like a major $100,000 shortfall, but the money was, it's kind of a separate issue at last year's town meeting. Bob kind of,
So in another year, maybe we could bump it
yeah.
$5,000 and
When we buy
cover
a piece
what
of
we
equipment, we
expect.
can add a little bit to it,
Yep.
and it would probably be.
All right, so we're voting on all these, starting with the fire truck.
So are you leaving the heavy highway at 30 right now?
Presently, yes.
Yeah.
Jay, you had your finger up there for a second on the fire truck. Oh, I'm sorry, B?
How, on the Balloon Road groundwater main, how long is that gonna go on? That was supposed to end in 2012, I'm just curious.
I actually know that because I remember you asking that last year and we questioned it, and it will be going on for the unforeseeable future as a protection for the groundwater and the residents of that area. So there is no end date to that. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Sweet.
Never ending story.
Mm-hmm.
Joyce?
Is the highway department employees operating that machine path on the sidewalk?
Yep.
Because I know it was a question last year, but good.
Yep.
They have to fight over it, so who gets to use it?
Oh,
Heated.
well, there hasn't been a lot of snow this year, really.
I know.
I know, that's been helpful.
Hasn't
So
been
far.
quite
So
as-
far, yeah.
Wait till Thursday.
All right, so we're voting on each one of these?
No, just the
No,
whole.
the whole group?
thing.
Yep.
I'm, again, I mentioned before about the road reconstruction capital reserve fund. I don't know if anybody's interested, like me, to take some money out of that for this year. This is kind of one of those, these are warrant articles of what drive our budget up so high, our taxes. So, this is kind of one place I would like to try to pinch pennies if I can, but I don't know if anybody's interested like I am on doing that. But
So if I'm reading this right, our fund balance was right around 706,000 if I add the numbers up on the left. Is that a ballpark?
Hold on a second.
6, yeah, about 700.
Right now, it's 1,043,260.
Is that the whole thing? So going all the way down the line? So it's 1 million.
Well, this is, you're asking about fund balance.
Right, and I just added these numbers at the top, or you're talking about the entire
Oh,
column?
no, I'm talking about the actual unreserved fund balance, not what's in the capital reserves.
Okay, so on the
Two
capital
separate
reserve
things.
funds, if I add the numbers at the top, it's around 706,000. And then we're asking to increase it by 258.5 over this year
Yes, that's
in the
correct.
budget. So it would be up around close to $1 million. I have no problem reducing that based on looking at what the capital expenditure and the capital improvement list is that we had sort of a 7-year look forward on from last year's annual report. And I believe that, I won't spread rumors, but I think that the police cruiser was put off for a year, last year, correct?
Yes, it was, yes.
So we're able to push that, and there was possibility of pushing one of the fire trucks another year. So,
Yeah, yep.
and that was already
Just remember
considered,
when it
so.
does come time to buy that, you're gonna lose
Yep.
$500,000.
Yep. And again, bonding could be an issue at that point, but down the road. So I have no problem for recommending a decrease in that amount.
For which line item?
I would guess the road reconstruction is where you were heading.
That's where I
that
was,
we do
yeah,
it.
yes, I thought you were talking about the fire trucks and things like that.
No, I was just thinking as that capital reserve fund for these that we're adding money to.
Mhm.
So
Right,
if we have to do it by line item, then that would make sense.
right, it would be off a line item, I think.
Then what do you recommend?
I was thinking 15, I don't know, Pat, what, could you get by on what your,
I just wanted to make sure that you guys know that that 65,000 doesn't get not spent, that's spent every year on the paving. Just so that you're knowing that that's not like something that builds up and builds up and builds up and then we spend.
no, it's just, it's something would have to be cut out, obviously. That's-
Yeah,
that's-
I mean,
I understand that, I'm just wondering if, I guess my question is there anything out there that could be cut? I know you could spend every single dime every
Right.
single year,
I mean,
but, you know, I know we've spent a lot of money in the last 9 years since I've been on the board on road reconstructions, and, you know, I was hoping that we'd get kind of up to speed. That was kind of my thought process when I came on the board, is that, you know, we're gonna put a lot of money in this, and maybe it's time, my thought process is, can we back off a little bit? That's all. If it's not possible, it's not possible, but,
But I think the wording of that road reconstruction, it's actually, that money has been spent every single year
I know.
for road maintenance,
Mhm.
not road, I mean, it depends how you, like Pat said, that money is spent every year. If you cut that out, your road work, your road paving is gonna get cut right in half, right in half. Half of what we're doing now is not gonna get done. And if you do that, we're going backwards.
I mean, I'm just, you know, we have a lot of money we put out for paving every year. How much do we do?
If you cut that out, that only gives you $130,000.
Instead of, I'm not taking all 65 out, I was just thinking 15,000 or something like that. That's what I
I
was,
thought you said you were taking it.
No,
no, I just wanted to cut. Reducing it some form or another. That was my thought
I
process.
can't recommend it. I mean, we worked really hard.
Oh, I know, I know.
And the reason that we're at 65 plus 130
Mhm.
is because that's what it takes to not go backwards. From 6 years of getting that budget where it needed to be.
Sarah?
Pat, do you have like a schedule of roads that you've done and roads that need to be done, or ditching? Is there some kind of a plan that you know, a person could look at and say, oh gee, I'm the next road that's gonna get done, or, you know, how do you choose what you're going to do?
I mean, you gotta look at the worst road that you got and kind of plan on it. I mean, there's definitely a running tally in my head. I'm kind of 1 or 2 years out, sort of know what you want to do, but I mean, anything can change. If I give you something that says I'm gonna pave Green Hill Road next year and then I can't because something happens
Right,
worse
right.
on Black, like I don't want to give people
Right,
a 3-year out, but
I'm just wondering if you had a plan. I know, for instance, we've had some bad winters and a lot of wash in the ditches areas, and it's causing road, what do you call it, when you go under the tar? It's causing
Erosion.
Undermining.
erosion or undermining. So my thought was, I just wondered, you know, if, as you say, I understand that there could be anything happen anywhere at any time, and that a person should say, oh, well, you said you'd fix my road. I'm just saying, I don't want to see that not be done, in
Yeah.
the sense that, you know, I mean, I think, I agree that maybe 50,000 could come off this year, and see how it pans out with what happens, where we've had a mild winter. Possibly it would make a difference, I don't know.
Any else comments on that? Richard, anything you thinking on that?
Well, I would prefer not to go backwards.
Okay. You can live with that?
I think it would help if we change that description, and I believe, I can double check it, but
as long as we're not changing the intent and the wording of an article can be reworded. It's a capital reserve, and I believe they're all now expendable capital reserves, so you have the authority to expend. And I'm 99% sure that PRA will allow you to change that description to, you're not reconstructing, you're really resurfacing and ditching. And that might, as Jay says, if we don't, but to reconstruct, that wouldn't get you 100 feet, you know? That's just a point, but if that's something that would help clarify that for people's minds, that it is resurfacing the majority of it, you can do that.
All right, I'm not opposed, but again, we can do something on the floor if that happens, yeah?
So just to clear it up, I mean, ditching has nothing to do with this road reconstruction. That's not, and this is, see, it's reclaiming and basically take what the operating line item is. I have this capital reserve fund, and then we get the highway block grant money, and it adds up to about usually $240,000 a year.
Right.
And that's all between reclaiming, paving, overlaying, crack sealing. If something's bad shape, you need to add gravel to something before it gets paved. That's what that is for. I mean, it all kind of, you spread it out, trying to go as far as you can. Just a rough idea, $30,000 paves 1/2 mile. So that's just so you have an idea how much money, that's 1 inch of overlay, hot top, nothing really prepped, no work done to it. It's 30 grand gets you 1/2 mile of road. And we just assess the best that I can, get input, get advice, talk to people. You know, we're gonna save money this year, we're gonna do some sealing instead of some overlay to try and go a little further with your money, and just try and go as far as you can and do as many improvements to each lane mile. The more lane miles you work on, the better you are.
John, keep in mind, those numbers haven't changed for like 8 years.
I know.
The cost of living increase per pavement, what pavement costs has gone up 3% a year. Somewhere between 1.5 and 3% a year. So we have gone backwards by not, we're getting less now than we did when we started this 6-8 years ago when we increased the money. This price pavement has gone up every year, but the budget hasn't.
True.
Can I change the subject then to the balance for the fire trucks?
What's that?
The fire trucks?
Yeah.
If you look at the balance of $320,278, and then you add $80,000, I believe if we look at the schedule, there's nothing to be, I'm sorry, there's upgrade of tools for $50,000 this coming year?
The 80,000 is calculated on all 3 trucks, so a majority of the money will go to the next replacement.
Right.
But there's still money figured in there for the next coming fire truck.
Right, so if I look at this schedule, if this is still accurate from the last town report, there's $50,000 that would be spent in 2020 for upgrade of reserve tools, and then the next truck that would be purchased would be around 2023. Does that sound right?
3 years.
And that's about 460,000 on here, so like give or take, depending on that.
Probably gonna be more than that now.
But even with that 80,000 per year, you'd still have a surplus at the end of 2023
Correct.
of around 100,000. Is that
Which
something?
goes towards the next truck.
Right, and then taking that out to approximately 2030, 2029, 2030, if we still maintained it at around 80,000, you'd be pretty flush with that balance. Is that something that you feel like we could reduce a little bit on that?
No, the next truck would be way more than 475.
Right. I'm just saying, if I'm calculating out the balance of the
We
fund.
dropped it 2 years ago, because it was 100 grand, and we dropped it to 80 for that exact purpose that you're talking about. 2 years ago, it was 100 grand, and we dropped it to 80. So I don't think, unless you want to get into bond and stuff to buy it, I don't think you should drop it. And the problem we found, I think, in doing a bond is 1 year your taxes maybe level or low, and then all of a sudden you get a bond for a fire truck, you get a bond for a loader. Now your taxes skyrocket that year.
Peter?
Not if you do a bond, I guess, because you're stretching them.
Right.
The other challenge we're facing here is that it's a little bit unique in that the truck that's scheduled for replacement is old even for a fire truck.
Right.
It's 31 years old.
Yeah,
The next truck in line on the next cycle would be significantly less old. So I think moving up, as we're trying to catch up from, I think we'll be in better shape, say 3 or 4 years from now than we are right now. And that truck is in good shape and it's holding on, knock wood, but it is 31 years old with a lot of water on it.
yeah, and I know that we do get our big bang for our buck with our money, but when we look at the capital improvement schedule too, do we take into account any trade-in value or antiquity?
You don't
You would get donated for scrap? I'm sorry, what?
The last one went up to the
The
dump.
last
It
one
did.
went for
No, the last tanker truck.
28.
Yeah,
How much did we get for 85 packs? Remember? 25,000 was the last one we sold.
nice penny.
So I don't think it's a good idea. I mean, if, like Dick had said a little bit ago, that's a pretty big discussion. We discussed it a lot. If you're gonna do it, then it would be, I would think, right across the board.
Okay. Do we buy new trucks or do we buy used trucks?
We bought new fire trucks.
If we consider looking at,
We've looked at them in the past, and it's not any cheaper if you divide out. I mean, we've got a truck that we're running 31 years right now. If we bought a used truck and when we bought that, it wouldn't have lasted 15 years. So the cost is the same in the end.
Sarah?
With your fire truck, you're talking age, and I know you're talking about replacement pads if you break down and so on and so forth. But do you go by engine hours, or is there any?
We go by condition. If you go by NFPA recommendations, they want us to trade them every 15 years.
Okay.
It's not mandatory. The reasons, the truck we got right now is 31 years old, is probably the longest the town has ever kept a fire truck in its career. But the town has never kept a fire truck that long, ever.
But what I was asking was like engine, I mean, different.
You look at everything. You can't go by hours and miles because those trucks don't have a lot of miles on them. It's a lot of other factors. But everything gets looked at. Age. For example, the last truck we traded in was actually a newer truck. But because it ran the notch all the time for motor vehicle accidents in the winter, the bottom of it was rotted out more than the older truck. So we traded that one. So there's a lot of variables that we look at. And we plan on keeping it longer than we need to because it's still a decent truck, a good truck.
I agree with you, Penny, though, as far as, I think every time you buy something, you have to consider whether new or used is the right thing. And, you know, if there's a deal to be found, then, and it makes sense, it should absolutely be considered. And then if it weighs out that the new vehicle definitely makes sense still, then you make the decision, but it should be considered regardless.
James?
Is there any depreciation that's factored in with the trucks aging? Is that something that, you know, that might make it a little easier to swallow this budget rather than decreasing it? I mean, what, does the town depreciate these things?
I mean, that's a non-cash, it would be a non-cash item on the financials, so it would make it look better as far as that, but
Well, that's, I mean,
when you
not
have
like a
to
business
approve the
thing.
budget, when you have to approve the budget, you're approving the
yeah.
dollars, but yeah,
That is an argument
Yeah.
for keeping it at that.
Yes.
You can say maybe.
Sarah?
Well, I just wanted to make comment that I appreciate the fact that possibly in the future, we will look at other, not just buying brand new, but secondhand, so to speak, because I know we all, and I think for me, I read the article in the newspaper how Freiberg purchased an older truck from out west and so on. So I'm glad to hear that, you know, I hope you'll take it into consideration.
One of the things that, and we've looked at it, and one of the things that hurt us is our topography. Our trucks are very specific.
Okay.
You go to Freiberg, you go to Cornish, you go to these places that are flat, it's a big difference of what you can buy and what we can buy, big difference.
Peter?
That's one of the biggest things that hurts us. Our trucks are really custom built for our topography. And you can't finding used trucks that are short with some good ground clearance and maybe four-wheel drive and things like that are hard to find used.
Let's wrap this up, I think.
Just coupled with the fact, not to open another can of worms, that we're in a small fire station.
Mhm.
Everything is
Small.
pushed down a little bit for us. It's a challenge to find the right vehicle for us at a new scenario like that. It's not possible.
Any other comments about the reoccurring capital reserve funds? We can vote on these as all as one group.
All is one, but just to confirm, we're not changing.
We're not changing anything other than the reevaluation of town property, which was already marked.
Okay.
Any comments on that? You all set? Good. All right, I'll entertain a motion to vote on those as a group of the reoccurring capital reserve funds.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
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 3, 0.
1.
Recurring expendable trust funds. Transfer station is down 20,000 now. State aid reconstruction's down 25. Bridge repair was up 3,000. Dry hydrants are down 4,500. Jay mentioned those earlier. Police, I assume that's mostly radio batteries and stuff like that. Fire department, same, no changes there. The Little Road groundwater went down 1,000, and town office equipment is at 500. Any discussion on any of those? Jay?
I just wanted to mention, not to go backwards a little bit, but Barbara had asked at the last meeting about the high roll emergency communications tower money and about reducing that. Well, the very next day, our radios broke.
I saw that.
I'm
I saw
so
you guys
sorry.
were up there.
So we had to go up, couple them out, pull the wheel up, pull all the radios out, put the spares in, send them out. Well, it isn't a big item, but that's why that money's there.
Sorry.
Yeah, that was just a coincidence.
Yeah.
Just a coincidence. Yeah.
Oops.
Any discussion on those items? Yes, Sarah. Go right ahead. No.
The bridge repair, that's up at,
Valley Cross.
Crossroad, right.
Yeah.
and you were discussing, is this going to be put off to discuss whether or not you figured you would, does that include the 40,000 for the
trusses
archway
or
anything?
The trusses are in a separate article just below under
Yeah.
new 2020.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I hadn't seen it.
Yeah, this is just to fund our share of the 20% that we have to pay.
Right. But
Okay, no, appreciate you asking, I
Yeah.
really do. I want to make it as clear as mud. All right, we'll entertain a motion to accept these reoccurring expendable trust fund. Vote.
I'd make that motion.
I will second.
Any discussion, any further discussion on those?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
3-0. All right, this is the one that gets the most. Reoccurring social services. Children Unlimited stay the same. Tri-County Community Action also remain the same.
They added a new category.
Oh,
New
yes.
category there. Dee-dee-dee-dee-dee, hot off the press.
Rita.
Tri-County Community Action Homeless Intervention is $420. Gibson Center is up $500. White Mountain Community Health up $31. Conway Area Humane Society is no change. Starting Point is up $432. Northern Human Services no change. Eastern Slope Airport dropped to 0.
I did not get anything from
Nothing from
a
them?
response from them.
Okay. Chamber of Fireworks still 3,000, no change, and the beautification project for the chamber is still also 1,000, so no change. Any discussion on those items? Sarah?
I find it a little odd that we're giving $2,000 to the Humane Society and then we're going to give $420 to the homeless.
Good
I
point.
mean, to me.
This is a new category for us, so we've never had this category before, so
That's what they asked for.
I was
That's
gonna
what they
say,
asked for.
was there any substantiation to what they asked for or why? Or was
I have the
that?
paperwork, but yeah, that's what they requested.
Maybe by population or something like
Yeah,
that.
no, usually have a
Yeah.
formula.
There's some formula.
Right,
It is
that's
funny
what-
that you said that though,
Yes.
because there is a sort of a running thing that kids and animals get more than the homeless, and it's not, not a good joke, but.
Does the Humane Society come and just say, we feel your portion for is $2,000, or that's by petition?
by petition.
By petition.
No,
No,
they
no,
don't-
not,
They don't-
they,
they make a submitment, right?
I'm sorry?
No, go ahead.
submission.
This group of social services, several years back, it was decided that they would no longer be petitioned because they were recurring. So at this point, for the past however many years,
Well, 3 or
they
4.
simply put in a letter requesting it. They no longer petition.
So they request the same amount?
Some of them have it based on formulas. Humane Society doesn't send any backup, they just send a request and an amount.
But they do they do have to send a request. They can't just assume that we're going to put it
Correct.
in here, in the warrant. They have to send something, but they don't substantiate it with an actual petition.
Which if the voters decide that they would have to supply that, then they can say so.
Okay, but at the meeting, are we subject to that amount only, or at the town meeting, or?
You can change any portion of that. You can change
The bottom
those.
line.
No, on this warrant article, you can change individual. The only one you can't change line by line is the operating budget. But within this warrant article, you can change any individual amount.
Here or at the town meeting?
At the town.
Well, either if the selectmen want to change it now, they
Well,
can.
we've
or-
listened to it now. It would change at the town meeting.
If we didn't change, yeah.
We've talked about this a lot. Last year, I tried to explain it, that we now can accept amendments to the line item totals in the operating budget. However, it really is just sending a
Message.
wish to the selectmen. The selectmen can take the entire operating budget. We reduce the amount. If someone makes an amendment up or down, we would increase or reduce the bottom line. And that's what you can't overspend, problems. But the line items, the selectmen have the authority to move any direction they want within that bottom line. The warrant articles stand alone. The only way that can be changed is an amendment off the floor, up or down, and if it's passed or defeated. So all of these are taken up one at a time. We can't group them all together as a warrant. We can for budgeting purposes.
No, we can,
Discuss
And
it.
that's,
no, these are the warrant articles that will be we do have the authority to all
So
the
that's
capital
new, I haven't
reserves.
gotten
No, we've done this for the past 2 years. The capital reserves, they're all grouped together, you're voting on that.
capital reserves, I'm just talking about the separate requests for warrant articles.
No, the social services are allowed to be grouped, we've done.
That's fine, but I'll check it.
Okay.
It's been an issue. I was just trying to clarify that you can amend on warrant articles, up or down,
On the floor.
but you can't do that. You can do that on the operating budget, but it's really a recommendation only.
But
As is your input here, is a recommendation to us at this time.
And I think that anyone that does submit something would do justice by showing up at the town meeting, like we saw last year. Having a representative for each of these it's a solid choice to make.
And they have been asked to
Yes.
come.
So in other words, now, because it's reoccurring, you don't need a town person to go around with to petition 25 people to sign that petition. We're just putting it in automatically.
Correct.
So in other words,
Not automatically, they have
No.
to send a letter to have it in each year, but it doesn't require the signatures.
And there are no new groups that can join
Right.
this group of social services. If someone new comes in, they would have to submit a petition.
but even so with the Tri-County action, they put in for 420 because they were
It's-
already in there,
Right.
they're able to
Correct.
subdivide, so to speak. Okay.
Again, the selectmen can accept a written request for an article without having to have a petition. That does fall back to the selectmen. If they decide we're not going to accept this without a petition, the people that are asking for it have to go out and get a petition. That hasn't changed.
Right.
Emily?
I was just gonna say, I think it'd be great for Tri-County CAP to explain that and what it is and what it goes towards.
The,
Is that in the?
Yeah, we just,
The homeless intervention?
Intervention, yeah.
I
Maybe
can,
that's in that letter.
yeah, I can probably put something in the report with some of these social service requests.
all right.
I might call them.
Okay.
Any other discussion on the reoccurring social services? All right, I'll entertain a motion to approve those.
I'll make that motion.
I will second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 3-0. New, 2020, bridge trusses.
So these are individual, it's a little
Yeah.
confusing, so these you will have to vote on individually.
Bridge trusses, 45,000. This is for the aesthetically pleasing trusses that they were going to add on the Valley Cross Road Bridge. The original design did not include them, and if we want them because we like them, then we will vote $45,000 for them.
We will pay for them. The state doesn't
Right,
step in there. That's not part of the
deal. Joyce?
John, are we using the existing ones? Are they going to be refurbished and reused?
Believe they're gonna refurbish those. I'm not exactly sure, but I believe that was the plan. The rest of the bridge is not usable, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
the 45,000 is to refurbish the
Yeah.
ones that are,
They're gonna take them away, rehab them, and bring them back. They'll put them in, and they're totally aesthetic. They have nothing to do with structure.
I like the aesthetics, I'll tell you that.
That's why I think it's on here.
$1,000 on it.
Is so that it will be voted on at the town meeting to see if people want to spend $45,000 for pretty,
Yeah.
or if we want to save that $45,000 and put it into something else, or, you know, save our taxes. So it will be discussed.
Yeah.
Is there a bridge design people can see?
Yeah, they presented at a select meeting. Julie, do we still have those documents, the pictures
we
of
do,
the
but it's
trusses?
not
But
even, we're not even at that point.
yeah, it was a,
If people want the trusses, then they'll design it differently than they currently have. So we have to find out whether the trusses are wanted before the final design is presented.
right. But they did have some boards and probably
Yeah.
find some history.
Sarah?
Is the bridge going to have the walkway that it now has? It will stay the same?
I think
Designing it a little
one of the
differently.
designs is to have a kick out in the middle of the bridge where you can stand and take pictures with a group or down the river, you know, I think that's an important aesthetic also, so I would like to see that in the bridge design. The trusses, I understand, will be voted on.
James, you had your hand up?
Same question.
Okay.
Answer it.
Anybody else? All right, I'll entertain a motion to vote on the bridge trusses.
I will make a motion to include the $45,000 warrant for the bridge trusses. And
I would leave them out, so, but I understand it'll be voted on at the town meeting.
All right, so I will second.
I'd second it.
You got a second? Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye,
Aye.
2-1.
Abstain?
Yeah.
Abstain.
I agree with you, Joyce. I love the trusses. I hate the 45,000.
Hate the 45,000, but love the trusses.
There again, that's something, I know you're gonna look at me and say, but that's something like the firemen did with their
Fundraiser.
Mhm.
fundraiser, that possibly maybe
Yeah.
that's something we could do too, to take
I
it out of
agree.
the
Kind of thing.
tax.
That has to be done pretty quickly, because we have to get the
That
design.
we have to get that design nailed down of whether we're gonna use them or not.
All right, fire station feasibility study, easy for me to say, $25,000. We've already had discussions about this. Any further input on the feasibility study.
I'd
You had
make a
some-
motion to accept that.
I will second that motion.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Valley Vision, trying to put this back in. You were charged last year and never received it. So, trying to get that back in there, so I guess we have to vote on it even though we won't be spending any money on it, because we never spent the money in the first place. But, any questions, discussion on Valley Vision?
No.
No?
I'll make a
Yeah.
motion to include that.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
3-0.
And I hope we get in touch with them.
Zoning ordinances.
Now, that one was voted on last night, 7-0 at the planning board meeting. In the past, sometimes the selectmen have weighed in, sometimes they haven't, so
This was on the short-term rentals,
it
correct?
is.
I have really very little input on the short-term rentals.
Well,
It's kind of a real tough issue for me. On a lot of facets, but I'm involved in that, but.
it comes down to, I listened last night, and there's people that don't want any short-term rentals, there's people that are in the business. I think the ordinance is trying to establish some control over short-term rentals. And I think that is a good idea. No, it's not perfect. We already found places that we'd like to tweak it up. But I think basically it's saying, look, in 3 years, it's another place where the internet has come in. There are no Airbnbs without the internet. The internet has created the avenue for this to take place. So we're trying to get ahead of it. I mean, we're already behind because it's happening, but we're trying to get ahead of it enough so that we can control it. We don't want Jackson to become an Airbnb town where every available property has been bought up by somebody they're not renting it to people that want to live here, they're renting it because short-term rentals generate more money. Money talks. I mean, that's what generates the whole thing. So I think the ordinance is an effort to just try to control it and have some say about what facilities are going to be rented to people coming from out of town.
Comments on that?
I do have a comment, actually. As an out-of-state resident and property owner, taxpayer in Jackson here, I was actually hoping to get into a discussion, maybe tonight isn't the night for that, but it does, I think it's fair to say that the majority of the people, I don't know if it's the majority, but a lot of people from out of state buy these properties up here. I own one. It's my personal house. I don't rent it. But when I bought it 10 years ago, it was presented to me as a rentable with income. I've been renting here for 30 years prior to that. So it's not something new. It's just a new way to do it. And I vehemently oppose restrictions on that. Vehemently. Because what's going to happen is people are going to buy places elsewhere. They're going to sell their homes. A lot of people like me use that income, as a second, just to offset the expenses and pay the heating bill or whatever. And I think to take that away is going to hurt the economy up here. It's going to hurt the property values. It's going to hurt the businesses. The type of people that rent these homes don't want to stay in the inns. They want to stay in homes where they can cook or do a puzzle, multiple bedrooms. I mean, it's been going on for forever. So that's all I want to say. I definitely oppose any kind of restriction on that.
Anybody else?
I understand the need and the desire for some restrictions, however, I wasn't able to stick around for the planning board meeting. But at the last budget meeting and selectmen's meeting, when Jerry Senior was discussing the process, it sounded just incredibly onerous to me. The timeline, the paperwork, the expense. As a homeowner, I wouldn't want that. I just felt it was onerous.
Well, I don't know about the expense. I think the application fee is $50, so I don't see that as an onerous expense. And as far as the process, that's where the state has stepped in. We have no say. This is the way it has to be.
Then why are we passing a restriction? I'm not sure if the state's already has something in place, then why?
Of how to do it. We adopt whatever the state allows us through the RSAs. We can't make up new rules if they have dealt with it. So they have dealt with it, and this is how we have to do it. At this time, I think it'll change. I think the legislation is in the House now to make that a more streamlined process. But for the moment, if we want to put this through this year, this is how we have to do it.
But it's following the state guidelines.
Yes.
Okay. Ken?
I'd also point out, and I know that the planning board's grappled with this, but the way that some of them are being operated right now are probably illegal based on the definition of the rural residential that you have currently. So this in part was an effort to make what is now currently being operated as illegal, legal, as opposed to us just introducing.
I would think any rental would be illegal for that matter, for whether it's a long-term or
Based on
short-term.
the zoning ordinances that you have right now, where people are incorporating these LLCs and doing this, that's not a legal operation in the rural residential area right now. So this is a way of trying to incorporate something that's going on to make it legal as opposed to just simply restrictions.
Jay?
So,
I'll come back to
while
that.
this guy was here, I wanted to make a comment. I don't think, and I'm from the fire department side of it and working with the plan board a little bit, and the building inspector, and the state fire marshal's office. We're definitely not trying to tell people you can't rent your house out. The problem, where the big problem lies, is people are renting them out and using them as hotels. You know, it's one thing to rent you want to rent your house to somebody, make a little money, you rent it out, maybe they bring a couple friends. That's legal by fire code. The problem is when you rent it out and they bring 8 couples, now you're running it as a rooming and lodging establishment. And that's, I think, where the big, I don't think there's anybody, whether it's in Conway, Jackson, or anywhere, that wants to say you can't rent it out. But what we're looking at is you can't use this as a hotel and not do the hotel codes. Because there was a very local house that was rented out, and when the fire department showed up, it wasn't in Jackson. There was 30 people sleeping in different rooms and on pads on the floor without smoke detectors and things like that. So that's where where the restriction is working towards.
And I completely understand and agree with that 100%. I thought the restriction was on the amount of actual time of use in period, whether it's days or weekends, or if you're going to restrict the amount of visits, let's say.
One of the problems I had with the planning board's wording on one of them was they had a thing in there on advertising, how much you can advertise for. And it kind of sounds like you're restricting it, but it was just an advertising thing is the way it was worded to me.
So it currently doesn't exist that it's restricted in terms of nights or stays?
The present ordinance?
I believe the wording there now
That was
is 30 rentals. Now, a rental can be a week.
Is that the state?
Excuse
I'm
me.
sorry.
A rental can be a week, a day, a week. Most of them are minimum 2 days. On Airbnb, I think you have to do 2 days. Up to, I think the cutoff was 180 days. So they're not really trying to say you can't rent it. They had to put a number on how many rentals. That's be 30 weeks, say it was a 2-day or a 3-day. It'd be 30 2-day weekends. Well, that's what they want to keep it at. And part of the feeling is they don't want investors coming in that just buy a property to rent it, short-term, boom, boom, boom. So if you keep it at, say, 30 rentals, that might limit how much they're going to put into it. So it may not be worth their while to buy that house that a young couple could buy. Or an older couple could buy. It doesn't have to be young. It could be an affordable house that gets a permanent resident.
Go
Can I
ahead.
speak?
Yes.
Is that consistent with the state guideline?
Yeah.
That's what the state is proposing?
We tried to stay within the mandates from the state.
Okay.
One of my questions last night about that was, is this going to lead to litigation? That's my biggest fear about all of it was, is little Jackson going to be the forerunner to have to defend all, the wording in court? And hope, because I voted to keep our
Let the state have it.
law budget down, and I want the state to decide how it's going to be.
Yeah, if that's the state's.
Joyce, you had your hand up, Roy?
I just wondered, is this going to be a ballot article? It's not a warrant article, is it? Isn't it on?
This is a ballot vote.
That's what I thought, because if it's no money involved, it becomes.
Well, it's not necessarily has to do with money. We've got the ordinances that are non-monetary, but the zoning amendment changes are the same day as the.
As the vote.
Yeah, the vote.
So it'll be on the ballot.
It's a ballot vote, yeah.
Okay. that's
Thank you. Peter?
I would just say, having been on both sides of this, having been a renter, we've rented Airbnbs, we've rented our house on Airbnb, we've rented full-time. It's a tricky balance, trying to regulate, and I use the word regulate rather than restrict, because we're not trying to restrict all Airbnbs in the town, we're not. We're just trying to get a handle on what it means for this community to grapple with this. So you're balancing that regulation of an industry, just like we regulate septic systems and fire codes and all the other things that we do. You're trying to balance that regulation with people who live here, right to enjoyment of their property, and for us to be able to thrive as a community. I didn't envy the planning board task in doing this. This was the hardest job ever. But I think it is just an attempt to get some handle on regulating what this means. I mean, this valley leads I think we're one of the top Airbnb per capita regions in the country, and there's something 60 or 70 Airbnbs in this town alone. So
Keep going. It's over 100.
I mean, it's a big thing. So I think trying to get a handle on how we regulate this and manage this in the community is a good thing.
And I'll just encourage, there was a year-long project in getting people's input as to the impact it's having on our housing stock, on our communities, and that report is available on the town website, so that you look at all the different approaches that are being taken, because it's a very, very challenging issue. I will also, I'm just looking right at the article itself, the short-term rentals in existence in the rural residential district at the time of adoption of the ordinance, if it is adopted, shall be exempt from the restriction on the number of annual rentals. So it was something they recognized, people who were already, in business, that would be standing as it is, but otherwise.
Anything else? All right, so we take a vote on that one? No. Would you like to take a vote on that one?
Oh, I would. I'd like to make a motion to take a vote on that one.
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion to vote on that.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion?
Who's in?
All those in favor, say aye.
I think.
Aye.
Bye.
Was that 3?
Nope, it was 201.
201.
I abstained. I'm not happy with it. I don't like restrictions. But any case, all right, moving on to noise ordinance.
Regulations, not restrictions.
Right. Well, it is when you put 30 days on it, 30 rentals, that's a restriction, isn't it? Right?
I already voted.
No, I'm just saying. All right, noise ordinance. All right, we had large discussion on this. We changed the times, as Chief Pearlie said, from 10 to 10:30. I believe that was the only change we made. Is that correct to that?
And just to clarify, that these ordinances that are listed below, other than the zoning ordinance, those are going to be hand vote at town meeting.
Thank you.
So, yes. Yes,
Or voice vote.
This
Or your hand.
person, if you had the original noise ordinance, the modification to the times, again, the original time of 10 to 6 was just taken from a variety of ordinances that I used for models. I modified it to 10:30 so that these quiet hours are consistent with quiet hours that we encumber businesses that host weddings, so shovel handle and that work, which is a component of the liquor license, so that the law is consistent with other statutory or regulatory schemes. The noise ordinance is a compilation of ordinances that are already in place in communities and have passed any kind of construction or constitutional challenge, primarily Londonderry, and it's a real pared down version of Londonderry's. Londonderry's went on and on and on and was a little more complicated than we needed. But one thing I want to say about the ordinances, kind of as a package or a slate, is that I thought Dick Bennett's words were very well spoken when he said, the problem, we're challenged, basically we're challenged with the Airbnbs and we're kind of behind the curve. We want to get in front of the curve.
Yeah, that's you.
I think that's what these ordinances do, because we only have one time a year to have any kind of regulatory construction for the year coming up. Because if we decide that noise is a problem in June, we don't have another opportunity until the following town meeting. So where none of these regulations currently exist, that's what I try to fill those gaps. And also, this is the time to do it. Try to get ahead of problems. These are all based on actual problems and complaints we receive. I think I've made that painful clear. But it's also to put the regulatory scheme in place so that we can do something should they continue to happen or they happen in the future with more frequency or the same frequency. The other thing too is, no matter what the regulatory scheme is that we have with ordinances, the police department, at least as long as I'm chief, is going to still use the wise discretion and kind of the gentle hand that they use with all of our enforcement and discretionary acts. None of these proposed ordinances have any mandatory application. You don't see the word shall when it comes to enforcement. They're a tool for us should a kind word and a gentle suggestion not cut it when there's improper behavior. So I just want to remind everybody that just because we have an ordinance in place doesn't mean we change the way we're going to do business. We still are going to use good judgment and discretion and fairness in their application. But if they don't exist, there's nothing we can do.
So in here where it says penalties, you didn't say book them down?
Always.
No, and again, I got to tell you, Julie and I were talking today about the noise ordinance. This will be my 4th budget cycle, 3 years, 2 months as the chief. I've probably been asked 20 times a year about the noise ordinance in Jackson. So I flipped through the book the first time I was asked. I'm like, we don't have that. There was an ordinance that said something like quiet time begins at 10 or something like that. That's all the language that was in it. So then we did the research and there was never a vote, there was never a decision by the select board on any kind of noise ordinance. So people asked about it 20 times a year, thought we all had one, and we didn't have one. So that kind of makes me think that the town wants one to begin with, because everybody wanted to know what the regulations were. But we didn't have one. It was never voted, never put in place. It had no conditions. It just basically said, see disorderly conduct. And the ordinance ordinances allow us something less than arrest. If you commit a noise disturbance currently in Jackson, if you commit a noise disturbance and we show up, we ask you to quiet down. The second time we show up, it's an arrestable offense because it's a misdemeanor disorderly conduct. Anytime you create a disturbance after an order to cease and desist, it goes from a violation to a misdemeanor. So then we would have to either do nothing or arrest you. This gives us that middle ground to mitigate any kind of resistance or repeat offense without resorting to that. So I think that's probably pretty important. And it's often suggested that we don't need regulations, we should let common sense dictate what we do. Let me give you a concrete example of common sense. Saturday night at 1:30 in the morning, we got a disturbance call because up on Juniper Lane, someone's cutting a tree down with a chainsaw. Now, I know chainsaws run on two-stroke, but I think the chainsaw runner was running on alcohol. That's why we need regulations, is because common sense doesn't dictate. If it did, I'd still be selling Dutch Pro, I wouldn't be a policeman. So, the noise ordinance, if you have any questions about it. The exemptions, again, snow removal.
Would you pass that hourglass down?
Snow removal, it's gotta be done. And that includes private and public, not just municipal. Activities of a temporary duration, this isn't for overly sensitive people. Or that it's been permitted, we have permitted construction activities or permitted other activities. It exempts farming. Farming has to start early, generally starts early, sometimes goes late. And public works and public safety, if you complain about a fire truck or,
Plow truck.
road construction at night, things like that, or a police car. And the language that might look odd, there was, one of the regulations prohibits people from yelling, shouting, or hooting. I didn't come up with the word hooting. I took it from already established ordinances, and I think it's common usage. Hooting is somebody hooting and hollering in the middle of the night that they shouldn't be doing. So, it's pretty self-explanatory.
Any other comments about that one? Go ahead.
That's a great question.
We can hear them from Route 16.
That's a great question.
Yeah, from Route 16.
But you can't have a town ordinance that supersedes a state statute. In the hierarchy of regulations, you can't do that. I think it's called usurpation legally. So there are already regulations on the books for the decibel levels of motorcycles. So we couldn't identify motorcycles specifically. I mean, it could fall under unreasonable noise under this ordinance, but if we specifically identify motorcycles, it could be challenged on a legal basis for usurpation because there's already statute on motorcycle decibel.
But there's another mechanism in place, should
Yeah,
you decide.
yeah, I think it's a $250 ticket. It's a sticky wicket because you gotta have the tool to measure it, and there's a specific formula for measuring, of which we don't have. Fortunately, motorcycles usually don't do it. As opposed to dramatic jackhammer for blasting. So, good question. What's that?
Except for when we
Yeah, so, but good question.
Any other discussion on that? Entertain a motion to vote on the noise ordinance?
I will make a motion to vote on the noise ordinance.
I'll second that motion.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, 3-0.
Camping.
Camping!
I didn't get any questions on camping, so everyone must love the idea of camping regulation. Yes.
I got a question.
Can you call him?
The fire permit? Is that in the camping?
On the camping one?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can't get a fire permit unless you own the property, and you have to have a letter. If you're like a renter, you have to have a letter from the people that own the property to obtain a fire permit, giving you written permission to have a fire permit. So I'm not sure how well fires are gonna work just using like Prospect Farm. I'm not sure.
Okay, I accepted Prospect Farm because it's clear to me that the regulatory regulatory scheme of Prospect Farm is almost more ensconced in the Conservation Commission than it is the Select Board.
Yeah.
So, but Prospect Farm already has a regulation with the kindling of a fire in their rules that I shared with Ken and that Julie shared with me. So there's already a rule in place about fires in Prospect Farm. So I didn't want to confuse a camping fire in town property. I didn't want this to conflict with the standing rule with Prospect Farm. So it says, except for the rules associated with Prospect Farms, because Prospect Farm allows a campfire, I think with the permission of the fire chief. I gave you the rules, but what does it say on it?
It says, except for the rules associated with Prospect Farms.
No, remember the rule sheet I gave you for Prospect Farm?
Oh, I'm sorry.
It says something about, I think the fire chief or the fire warden can give permission to have a fire up there.
I think it would.
write a permit is with permission from the owner.
Fire permits are required at camping and are issued by the Jackson Fire Warden.
Yeah, so this slate of rules that already exists, and this one's date 2014, already spoke about fire permits, and it says fire permits are required if camping and are issued by the Jackson Fire Warden. That's the Prospect Farm rules. So I want to make it clear that these don't change that, right, wrong, or indifferent.
Right.
And then that anywhere else, permit or not, is prohibited.
Right.
I think the existing Prospect Farm rules are a little iffy
Yeah.
as to whether.
Yeah, but like I said,
I was thinking that it said maybe you changed it, but I was thinking that when I was reading the prior ordinances, it
Okay,
was,
so this
the
will
last
be
version
discussed.
that we got a couple of weeks ago was a little different, and it talked about fire permits may be obtained, but it just.
yeah, that might have been the Prospect Farm one, but that was off the table because, like I said, it's clear that the regulatory scheme is more Conservation Commission than Select Board, so we just took it off.
Perfect.
This is to make it clear that if you're allowed to camp, because this, again, this camping ordinance does allow under some conditions camping. My concern was having a strict prohibition of camping can draw attention from homeless advocacy groups, and they can challenge it, saying that you're criminalizing homelessness. And that's been successful in some jurisdictions. But this ordinance allows permissible camping with permission of the selectman or the designee. For instance, if it was an emergency and somebody's car broke down, they had to sleep overnight in the parking lot, they can be issued a one-night permit, like maybe they can't get a wrecker or somebody's not gonna pick them up the next day. But if somebody decides they wanna park their motorhome in the town parking, and camp there all summer for free, or it's $100 a day.
Which becomes a short-term rental and
Short-term rental, yeah. Airbnb in a parking lot.
I make a motion that we accept this ordinance.
I will
that's another-
second that.
You just said driver tax now. That is another ancillary benefit of an ordinance versus relying only on statute. Ordinance fines come to the town. Statutory fines go to the general fund of the state of New Hampshire. Now, when it comes to regulatory schemes, I'm all for, like, they're not money-making schemes. They should be really revenue neutral. You do them to enforce for public safety, but fines for ordinances do come to the community.
Any other discussion on camping?
Fine for dancing.
Entertain a motion for the camping ordinance?
I made that motion.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, snap, crackle, and pop, fireworks. All right, last time we met, we talked about, I know Peter Benson and I mentioned about having homeowners being allowed to use them.
Yeah, if I can speak to that.
Sure.
And, I want to remind everybody that regulations don't demand enforcement. They allow for enforcement should it be needed. And I think we've established the way that we work within and with the community pretty well. I don't have to belabor that point. But I didn't want to make any changes to this ordinance to exempt homeowners or really exempt anybody other than permitted displays, because it truly is a public, well, they're all public safety ordinances, but it's strictly a public safety ordinance. It's not a nuisance ordinance so much. And whether you own a home or you're a visitor, public safety is public safety. The act endangers the community or disturbs the peace and quiet the same, whether you own a mansion or you're renting a place. You know, one of the conflicts it could put my agency in is if we had simultaneous complaints about fireworks in 2 neighboring properties, and we went there. And one person owns the home and the other person is a vacationer or renter or what have you. And we show up and they're doing the exact same thing. We would be, okay, property owner, have a nice day. Okay, out of towner, here's your $100 ticket. That's so ugly when it comes to your enforcement scheme. It smacks of selective enforcement. It could even lend itself to challenges for prejudice or bias, depending on the class of person that you might be dealing with, if they're a protected class. And I just think it complicates matters and makes it undermines its true point, and that is public safety. So I didn't change that. It really, to me, it's up or down whether the town wants it. If you don't want it, you don't want it. But I didn't think the modification would serve any legitimate purpose.
I make a motion, we accept the fireworks ordinance.
I will second that.
Any other discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
2-0-1. I abstain. All right. Next, we have use of tobacco products prohibited prohibited ordinance. I'm getting tired, I guess.
Yeah.
I did make a modification to this one. I added an exemption based on conversation and discussion at the last meeting, and that is exemption B. These rules shall not apply to persons while using the town of Jackson property known as Prospect Farms. I thought Penny's commentary was interesting in that, well, what if somebody's out hiking around or hunting or smoking a pipe? Now, I think, John, you pointed out that we're not really seeking out people smoking. It's usually responding to a complaint, oftentimes when we have a public event and somebody might be smoking or vaping. It also regulates a technology that didn't exist, years ago. Vaping, just people would come into a public meeting and start doing it. But to assure the community that it's not to seek out people and pinch them for smoking cigarettes or what have you. And also recognizing that the Conservation Commission seems to be the tip of the spear on regulating Prospect Farms. I wrote in that exception that it's not up to us to decide. It's not up to the select board. I think it is legally, but it doesn't seem like an application it is. So I wrote that exception in.
I make a motion that we accept the use of tobacco products prohibited ordinance.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah, I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, and use of skateboards and scooters.
I did make a modification to this one as well after discussions last week. It was brought to my attention by a couple of gentlemen that are skateboard aficionados that in section 3E, if you look at E, it requires skateboard riders and scooters to give continuous hand or arm signals consistent with recognized traffic hand signals. It previously exempted scooter riders, but it didn't exempt skateboard riders. But the skateboard riders told me that sometimes they couldn't safely give hand and arm signals because they have to use their hands and arms to stay on the board, stay balanced, or even sometimes stop. So I said, okay, well then I don't want any ordinance to endanger participants. So I added that skateboard riders as well as scooters are exempt if the use of the hand signal interferes with safe riding. And again, this whole ordinance is really just the bicycle rules applied to skateboards and scooters. So it's no more restrictive, it's no less restrictive, and it provides for their safety and the safety of everyone on the road. One reason I would encourage you to support the skateboard ordinance, and I talked with the fellows about that, is oftentimes communities that don't have any regulations on skateboards can get to a point where they're so frustrated, it's like, okay, total ban. I don't think we need to ever be there. And I think having the regulations in place puts people on notice that we have regulations, they have to comply with them, it gives us an ability to enforce them. And then if that's not complied with, then an ability to penalize. But an ordinance like this can prevent that slippery slope of strict prohibition, which is, disenfranchises people who like skateboards, and they have a right to have fun. It's, like I said, every time I deal with a skateboard rider, Jackson or other community, the first thing they say is, I have the same rights as everybody else in the road, and they really do. But those rights come with some responsibilities for safety, just like we all have, so.
I make a motion that we accept the use of skateboards and scooters ordinance.
Were you asking a question?
Well,
Go ahead, I was gonna open it for
We can have
discussion,
discussion
now.
but you can second it.
I was gonna wait to see
Okay,
if
go ahead.
somebody had a question first.
In item H, it's just a typo.
Oh.
Yeah, the reward facing flashing red should be really, they're not gonna reward the.
Rear word, not reward.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good job.
Thank you.
So I'm looking for a second.
I'll second.
Any further discussion or corrections?
Nope.
All right, hearing none, all those.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, your question?
No, just after our conversation last week and cleared that up and got the Hanson thing figured out, so it's good.
Thanks
Right.
for your input.
Thanks for your input, exactly. Appreciate it. Any other further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 3-0. Yes.
I don't know if this is where it's, bring it up, but I think it's under new warrant articles. It's my understanding that the water precinct may be asking you guys to present a warrant to expound the boundaries of the water precinct.
That is actually going to be a discussion for the selectmen to have at the February 25th meeting, the next meeting. And at that meeting, they have to, if they choose to, then they approve the recommended boundary change. And then notices would be sent, if they did agree with that, notices would be sent out to the people involved in the water precinct. And that vote would take place prior to the water precinct's annual town meeting.
Which is
when?
March 23rd, Monday, March 23rd.
Okay. Is there a water precinct meeting prior to?
February 10th is the water precinct meeting, it's at 6 PM at the water precinct.
Okay.
And it's a public meeting.
It is a public
Yes,
meeting.
it is, yeah. It's for Apple Scott.
Thank you.
we have one petition article, a resolution to take action on climate pollution. That was one we looked at earlier, right?
Yes.
So any discussion on that? I entertain a motion to.
I don't think you typically.
You don't have to vote on that one? No? No. Okay,
It's
I won't.
petitioned.
Petition, all right. Didn't know they need our approval. All right, previous year, 2019, that closed out in terms of the capital reserve funds, the generator for the fire department, Valley Cross Road Bridge, cemetery fencing, and town reevaluations were paid for in last budget, so obviously they will not be part of this one. Total warrant articles for this year, 2020, coming up is $458,143, down 66%, $915,379. Potential impact on the tax rate is roughly $1 per thousand. Any questions on that? Now the important thing. Does everybody have one of these?
No, that wasn't just
What do
in
you-
the town report.
No? So we're not gonna discuss this?
If you'd like to discuss it, no one has copies of them.
Okay, well, they do have a breakdown of tax rate comparisons, and like always, well, again, fortunately, like always, we have money in our reserve fund to offset some of those taxes, so I guess we have to decide how much we want to retain there at some point.
That doesn't happen until September.
Right, but again, we're looking in the the tax rate to go down if we use the appropriate amount of money that's suggested by the DRA? Yep, DRA. DRA, and so looks like the municipal portion, if we do use the recommended amount, will go down some, so that's good news on the tax rate, at least our portion of it. And of course, the warrant articles are a separate bear altogether. Any other questions, comments, concerns from the peanut gallery that's left?
Diehards.
Nothing? All right.
I'd make a motion that we adjourn the second budget hearing.
I will second that motion.
All right, any discussion? Hearing none.
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all for coming. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
very much your input.
I thought you guys were buying dinner, no?
Huh?
I thought you guys were buying dinner.
Yeah, dinner's on me. Yeah.
Yay, where are we going?
Really? At the burner?
Peanut butter jelly sandwiches.